Hello, Thomas. Thank you
Hello,
very much.
everybody.
Thank you very much for agreeing, taking part in our interview. I think it would be quite logical to start this interview talking about you and your education. I know that you are not only a musical theory scholar and also violin and composition student. Did you have any idea of combining theory and practice while you were studying then?
Yes, in Switzerland, you have to choose between two tracks. On the one hand, you have the full university, and on the other hand, you have the universities of the arts, the music conservatories. And I've chosen the university, the full university track, and I've studied at the University of Zurich, musicology, German studies, and history. And between the two institutions, there were always a gap, and I wanted to fill out this gap. So I have also visited some courses in the music conservatory. For example, performing practice with Nicolas Arnaud and Johannes Sonnleitner, and teacher we had in the university. We had music analysis of contemporary music by Hans-Ulrich Lehmann. He was the director of the Music Conservatory, and he was a student of Boulez and of Stockhausen. And so we asked him that we could also attend some composition lessons with him. Aside of this, I had also private lessons on the violin with Elmer Glanz and Daniel Zisman, and I was also the concertmaster of the students' orchestra, but not as a professional, but only as a semi-professional.
Did it by any chance influence your compositional or performative activity? Did it influence your theoretical findings that came later?
Of course. On the one side, I was very interested in the historical informed practice of playing, and I used this for my own violin playing. And I had also my master thesis about this subject, about the articulation of the violin playing in the 18th century. And now in my position at the University of the Arts in Bern, I had also several performing practice projects running. And on the other hand, about contemporary music, of course, these lessons in compositions opened my ear and my mind to the most important contemporary music tendencies run in the 80s. Yes.
And I also know that you have a rich experience in teaching in various universities, like high schools, Hochschulen in Switzerland. So, can you say about the aspects, like very specific aspects of educational process, teaching process in Switzerland? Could you tell us in general about the music theory education in your country? So, what disciplines are studied, and what are the focuses, primary focuses of music theory studies in Switzerland while the process goes?
I think both in the music conservatories as well as in the universities. You have introduction in organology, in acoustics, in instrumentation, in music history, of course, in music theory of the Baroque, the counterpoint, then music theory of the Romantic, harmonics, then the post-Romantic and also the contemporary notation of music, also of ancient music, but as well as of contemporary music. In Bern, we have also a specialty of the Theater Musical. That was a branch established by George Pergis. We had also Daniel Ott there. We deal also with the music of Mauricio Kagel. And of course, we have also studied this music. And some of these music theory lessons lead also to research projects about several aspects of the music. For example, there was a research project about music theater in the post-Bavarian time, or about the music theory in the 19th century, and about Gehörbildung, Hearbuilding. So we deal with the several aspects. And in Switzerland, you have several branches of music theory. On the one hand, in the German-speaking world, it's mostly as in Germany, also with the Riemannian theory. In the western part of Switzerland, the French part, you have very much solfège like in the Paris Conservatoire. So it's also interesting to study the differences between these theory approaches.
Thank you very much. And now that I know that your life is connected to the University of Arts in Bern, in which also there is a doctorate program of studies, could you please tell us about the idea of this program?
Yes. In Switzerland, there is a law that promotion that PhD program is only allowed for full universities, with the exception that in cooperation with a full university is allowed also for the music conservatories, for the universities of applied sciences. And so 10 years ago, we have established, together with Bern University, the Philosophic Historical Faculty, a program. And it's a joint project about artistic scientist PhDs. And in this joint program, there are the two partners, on the one hand, the university, and on the other hand, the HKB, the Hochschule der Künste Bern. And so you have always two supervisors, the first one from the university, the other one from our side. You have two directors of this doctoral school. At the moment, I'm the director, and my joint director is the Professor Cristina Ucciugia from the musicology department of the university. And we have a steering committee with 4 members of the university and 4 members of our side. There is a curriculum the PhD candidates have to follow. So there have several workshops about interdisciplinary subjects. It's to say that it's not only for musicology, but it's also for the other topics, because the HKB is not only for the music, but also for the visual arts, theater, writing, conservation. And so we have in these doctoral projects also the history of arts, we have the German studies, we have the French studies, we have the ethnology, we have the history, we have theater, and we have even archaeology. And so every PhD candidate have to follow several workshops, for example, about experimental archaeology or about sound studies or about post-colonial studies. Then you have to visit some soft skill courses, how to present in English, how to get money by foundations, how to deal with big data, how to learn with statistics about English writing, and so on. You have also colloquia on both sides at the HKB and at the full university in your institute. And we have also a day every semester where the PhD candidates present their theses. And for a half an hour, then there will be a discussion for an hour, half an hour moderated by the PhD candidates themselves. And after this, they have also the occasion to work out articles for a book. Every 2 years, we issue a book, a volume with about 10 or 12 articles, contributions of the students, but also of their teachers. There is also a module introduction in the studies in the arts. It's a 4-day course, and the whole program is for about 3 or 4 years. At the moment, we have 40 PhD candidates of these mentioned disciplines. I think about 25 came from the music. There are some composers, there are pop musicians, there are jazz musicians, there are performers, there are music pedagogues. So we have any kinds of candidates. It is also for the age. Some of them came directly from their master studies. Other ones were assistants at our school or at other art schools, or even professors, because before it wasn't possible to do a PhD in Switzerland as a musician or as a artist, a visual artist, and now so we have is possible, and so we have also candidates that are already 40 or 50 years old.
What are the prospects for the students of your program that you are? So the students, PhD students, once they finish this program, music theory, what are the prospects? What can they do next? What are their ways of continuing?
There are many perspectives because it's a joint program by the university and by the University of the Arts. Some made postdoc projects at the university. Some went professors at the HKB, at our school. One student is now at the Paul Sacher archive in Basel. researching in contemporary music projects. Another one is now conservator at the Swiss National Museum. Another one in the Swiss Design Museum. Another one is now responsible for the continuous building, the Weiterbildung, and most of them they found a job. So it's very positive about the market perspectives of them. And of course, some have very mixed perspective. On the one hand, they are composers. On the other hand, they are giving concerts. On the third perspective, they are writing for newspaper and so on.
I know that you have a volume, that also volume is dedicated to the problems. So that I think it is the one that you mentioned. So could you tell me a bit more about the volume and the authors that are usually present? Could you maybe talk a bit more about that?
The volume from the studies in the arts. The last volume have several perspectives. On the one hand, and I think here it's especially interested the music part. For example, Manuel Berg is dealing with the Velte Mignon piano rolls. That's a research project running at HKB since 12 years now. It's about how did the pianists are playing in the past. The Velte Mignon have invented 120 years ago a mechanical piano controlled by paper tape, and many pianists were recording on this Velte Mignon piano. For example, Reinecke is the oldest one. Students of Liszt, students of Clara Schumann, but also Busoni, Dalbert, the young Horowitz, and also some famous composers like Gustav Mahler, Richard Strauss, Alexander Scriabin. And in his contributions for this volume, he writes about recordings of Tristan by Model and by other famous conductors. They have even worked together with Richard Wagner. And the advantage of this Velte Mignon paper rolls is it's more clear and more authentic than the old shellac recordings concerning dynamics, concerning articulation, even concerning the sound of the piano. And you can put it in a modern piano, concert piano, and so you can hear how all the famous pianists were playing. Another project in this volume is about the notation of music. It was a designer who was the author of this contribution, and the several aspects of music, the several kind of music needs, of course, several kinds of notations and technique of notation and technique of printing also. And he was dealing with, I think there are the most interesting ones. On the other hand, we had also some contributions by teachers. For example, Professor Brecher from Berlin. She had a contribution about acoustics in the room and about space and music from the Baroque, from the Boris Bezzati up to the contemporary music contributions by Luigi Nono with Prometeo, for example. And connected to this, we have also contributions by a PhD candidate, Peter Ferber, who is a technician and composer as well in the Zürich Hochschule der Künste. And he was writing about music for loudspeakers. So he has made an anthology of all music by loudspeakers from the very beginning in the 1950s up to the very important things like the Varese contribution in the Philippe Pavillon at the World Universal Exhibition, Xenakis' contributions there, and also about Hermann Scherchen and his loudspeakers. They are not stable, but they are moving also in the round. And I think that's a very special issue and a very interesting one, and very connected also to the other contribution of Arthur Brecht.
Thank you. Yes, and also one of your latest publications is called Arts in Context. What was the initial base for the publication, and what do you talk about there?
Arts in Context is a volume where we deal with several aspects about how you can need and use art also in an applied manner. Here at the HKB, at the University of the Arts, we had running for 5 years an institute called Arts in Context. So art together with other kinds of science, for example, together with social work, together with health, together with technique, together with economy. Because our University of the Arts is part of the University of Applied Science of Bern, and we have several departments. As I've mentioned, economy, technique, health, social work, also sports, and also agriculture. And we are working very narrow with them. And we have also some projects together, for example, how to install a waiting hall in a hospital so that the patients are not so nervous and not so aggressive. How can you do with some interventions to calm them and to do a better orientation for them? Or we had also a music project presented in this volume, also with film, with a video. You can find it on YouTube about an embodiment of the old phonograph recording series. It's contributions by Kai Köpp and his students Sebastian Bausch, Johannes Gebauer. They have made a reenactment of the recording of the early Joseph Joachim from 1906, I think, with the phonograph, and they have made an collage, a montage of the old recording and the reenactment, and to get the know-how how it was the dealing with these phonograph installations. And you can see this on YouTube. I can give after the link, or you can find it also in the volume. Or it's also about a new instrument we have developed. The double bass clarinet. It's a very big instrument, about 4 meters long. And it's not very flexible, and it's not so good in intonation. And here in Bern, we have a very famous and good player for this instrument, the Ernesto Molinari. And he wasn't satisfied by this usual instrument. And so we have together with instrumental makers in Germany, we have established a new instrument with electromagnetic keys. And so it's better for the intonation on the one side, and it's also more flexible. You can play it as fast as a normal bass clarinet. And there is also a link to visual arts, so you can also control a video projection, or you can do also live electronic projects with this new instrument. And we have presented this also together with the Sinfonietta Basel, a symphony orchestra. It's some new works by Michel Pelzel. Olga Neuwirth is also interested to write for this. We have presented also in the Concerthaus in Vienna and in Darmstadt at the summer courses. And of course, many composers are very keen to write for this quite new instrument.
Thank you. I think that this is a very interesting topic, and I would like to continue the talking about the projects that are the projects at the university. Okay, Tonkunst Lehrverein project. Could you maybe talk about this project also a little bit more, and why was it important for you?
For this, there was an association of Swiss composers and musicians. It was running from 1900 up to 2017. This association was the most important one for Swiss composers and musicians. They had their yearly festival. They have given fellowships. They were producing CDs. They have given prizes. They have also issued a journal. And in 2017, the Swiss government, the Office of Culture have stopped the subventions, and so the association couldn't live anymore. And then I was asked by the Siemens Foundation Munich to deal with the archive because the archive is a very rich one. They have the protocols and issues and the reports and the correspondence. Everything was there from 19 up to now, to 2017. And in a pre-project, we have researched about this archive. We have did triage, what is to held, what is to throw away, and then also to find an institutions to deal with this. Firstly, we have asked the National Archive of Switzerland, but they weren't enough professional to deal with. And finally, we have found the Bibliothek of the University Bibliothek Library of Lausanne, and they were ready to deal with them. And we had to find enough money also. And then we were preparing a big project about the history of the last 50 years of these institutions, so from 1975 up to now. And this project have 4 sub-projects. There is a postdoc dealing with the aesthetics, so about the schools, the tendencies, the composers supported by the associations, and the composers they are not supported. It was always a struggle between the progressive and the more conservative composers, also a struggle between German part and French part, because the aesthetics are very different. Then my own sub-project is about political issues, about the subject networks, opinion leaders, discrimination of versus promotion of women, also of foreigners, because since World War, foreigners in Switzerland wasn't very much supported. For example, Sándor Veres or Vladimir Vogel, Moscow-born composers, emigrated to Switzerland, or Hermann Scherchen. They weren't very welcome in Switzerland, and in the 18th and 19th, there was a changing process, and they were full accepted. And I'm also researching about the question how to deal with this past. Also with the past during the World War, where some of the composers and also some of the members of the association were dealing with the neighbors. In World War, Switzerland was in the sandwich between the fascists on the German, Austria, and also Italian. And how can I work together without offending the others? Was a very difficult question. On the other hand, we had some emigrants, as I've mentioned, the Moscow-born Vladimir Vogel. He was establishing in Ticino like an isle. He was teaching some of the most important Swiss composers, as Robert Suter and Jacques Wildberger, later professors in composition in Basel, or Rolf Liebermann, later the impresario of Paris and Hamburg Opera and Radio Broadcast Hamburg. So that's the political issues. The third sub-project is a PhD. It's about improvisation, because improvisation in the 80s and 90s were very important in Switzerland, especially the free improvisation for the emancipation project, also for the integration process, and as a catalyst of some democratic processes in the association of the Swiss composers. And the last one is also a PhD project. It's about contemporary music and television. How has the association influenced the different television broadcast institutions? We have, for example, some productions about Vogel, about Honecker, about Daniel Schneider, and about more contemporary music too. And we had also some interesting directors as Marthaler, not Christopher, but his brother Adrian, and Duquelin, for example, the famous impresario director of Basel. And this project is a 4 years running project funded by Swiss National Fund of Research. And of course, there will be also some symposia. The first one we have now in December in Bern, especially about networks in this time. And at the end of this project, we want also to present works they were prized by these associations, but also works they were refused by this association. And there will be also an exhibition about contemporary music from 1975 to now.
In your previous answer, you touched the topic of Swiss music of the 20th century and how it was influenced by the political situation. And talking about the Swiss music of the previous century, you cannot really avoid the figure of Paul Zacher. So, in your opinion, what is his influence on and impact on the Swiss culture?
But he was also important for his functions in musical life. He was a board member at the Helvetia Culture Council for 16 years. He was the only one. He did 4 periods of councilship there. He was also at the board of the Swiss Composers Association and president and honor president of this association. And I think one of the most important things is the establishment, the founding of the Paul Zacher Foundation in Basel, with the collections of many, many important composers from Webern to Boulez. And here you can find also the collections of many Russian composers like Cherepnin, Gubaidulina, Lurie, Silvestrov, Stravinsky, Uzvolskaya, Vishnegradsky. So I think he was a real mecene of all the cultural life. And of course, he did also many things for his own power, for his own sake, but he was very fruitful for the Swiss and for the international music life.
I also know that you have several works devoted to Swiss composers of the 20th century. So who would you suggest or recommend for finding out about them and hearing their music for our listeners?
From the Palsacher collection, here the most important Swiss composers are Klaus Huber, Rudolf Kelterborn, Heinz Holliger, Robert Sutter. There are several composers, Swiss composers there in the collection, yeah.
But from the question also was concerning your own findings, your own works that touched the music of Swiss composers also. So maybe out of your researches, are there any other composers that maybe you could suggest? Not from the foundation, not from the collection.
I think the most important Swiss composers are Beat Furrer, Michael Jarel, Hans-Peter Kiburz, Andreas Guardazzini, Dieter Amann, Bettina Skripczak. There are many, yeah.
And what, in your opinion, attracts young composers today?
Today, it is very difficult to get an overview. The music scenes are very disparate. On the one hand, we have still post-structuralistic composers like Bettina Skripczak or Nadir Vassena or Michael Jarel. We have also more traditionalistic ones as Iris Segi. We have the post-dramatic like Leo Dick or Stefan Wirth, who is also a famous pianist. Microtonality has an important role also in Switzerland, for example, with Eleni Ralli, a young composer. And we have also eclectic composers combining several achievements like Dieter Amann or Andreas Cartazzini. And we have a crossover and minimalistic roots as in the project by Nick Berg.
In your opinion, is there a Swiss compositional school as in, well, I think you understand, but as in a set of just like very traditional Swiss ways of maybe teaching or writing?
I don't think so. In the past, we had several traditions. On the one hand, the French part of Switzerland was more open to Paris, more to the neoclassics. And in Zurich and in Basel, as well as in Germany, it's more towards Germany. Today, I think it's very individualistic, and the best teachers have classes with open-minded students and strong personalities. This was the case already with Sándor Veres in Bern, who had so different students as Roland Moser, Urs-Peter Schneider, Jörg Wittenbach, or Heinz Holliger. Or let's say Klaus Huber in Basel, also with very different students, also very political active students. But today the classes were very international. For example, in Bern with Steen Andersen and Xavier Dyer, we have people coming from China, from Russia, from South America, etc. And there is also a great convergence with new media, with instrumental theater, with jazz, and with improvisation.
What is the case with free improvisation in Switzerland? What aims are the performers trying to achieve?
40 years ago, there was a very strong scene in Switzerland of totally free music, of international, well-connected musicians, very political also. 15 years ago, there was an article in the important journal Dissonance. This article was titled with the question, is Swiss improvisation at the end? And this has provoked a very strong echo, confirming that this was not so bad. But I think the ideological side, this was finished. Improvisation as absolute freedom and so on, that was finished. Today, there are many, many active micro scenes in different styles. Many use electronics, others works with foreign cultures. There is also a convergence with contemporary classical music. And now improvisation is so established that you can also study it at the music universities. For example, in Basel, you can also make a master in improvisation. And in Bern as well, you can study improvisation, of course.
What now are the ways of supporting and promoting Swiss composers?
I think one of the most important institutions is the Helvetia. I was also there for 70 years as responsible of the music department. They are supporting creative processes as well as dissemination within Switzerland, the exchange between the French, Italian, and German part of Switzerland, but also the exchange with abroad for concert tours, also for documentations with CD productions. This is now stopped, but replaced with internet platforms like yours, the Stravinsky platform. There are also cooperations, exchange, cooperative projects. For example, with Russia, there was a long project with the Helvetia ensemble that was more in Baroque music, but also for contemporary music. We had cooperations with Tarnopolsky or with Kasparov in Moscow. And besides Helvetia, of course, there are the cities, the cantons, this is the Swiss provinces. They are supporting young musicians, also established musicians, private foundations. There are many, many foundations here. And a very important role have also the radio broadcast and naturally also the schools, the music universities with their infrastructure, with specialized ensembles where young composers can train, can work with these ensembles or also with student orchestras and see how that work. And infrastructure is important. Also the computer music studios in almost all of the music universities in Geneva, in Basel, in Bern, in Zurich as well.
Thomas, thank you very much that you found an opportunity to talk to us again. And so I wish you good realization of your future projects, and I will be waiting also for your new articles, and thank you very much for being with us.
Spasiba. I'm looking forward to see what we can see on the platform.